What's going on, everybody out there? My name is Omri. This is my partner, Chris, and you're listening to the Admin Podcast. And guess what? Today, we got a special topic. We're going to talk about camera anxiety. It's funny. The reason why we chose camera anxiety is because this is the second episode, but the first episode, um, Chris was like, "Yo, I don't know what I was doing or what I was saying, and I feel like I've got camera anxiety." So I was like, "Dog, we should talk about that." And he was
No,
like,
no, I didn't say I think I have camera anxiety. I know I have camera anxiety. We 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 did our post pod little chit chat. See, I freaking did it again. Did our post pod chat talking about things and
Pod chat.
how I sounded because you couldn't see it on camera. You probably couldn't hear it except for a couple things, but I was
Right.
shaking like a leaf. And you know, listening back to the pod during editing and everything else, I, the only thought that kept coming in my head is we picked the wrong name. It should have been the podcast because I couldn't help myself. And that's that was my camera anxiety showing through. And part of the reason why I wanted to start this podcast with you is because I know I have camera anxiety. Put me in front of a room of 500 people. I will talk to them and I will not have an issue. Uh, I'll get into why there's a big difference between those two things, being in front of a crowd versus being on
Uh-huh.
camera later. But being in front of the camera and not having that feedback from an audience or anything else, I just kept thinking about myself. My head was
Hmm.
racing, my body was racing, and I couldn't stop saying, you know, I think every sentence for about 5 minutes span.
I mean, get get you on a podcast talking about some barbecue and some smoked ribs, and you can go for days whether you're on camera or not. That's what I
Oh,
know about you. But why do you think that is?
there is there's a difference between sitting here and talking about the different types of passions. When you're talking, did it again. I'm going to be doing that a lot. I'm going to catch myself until I stop doing it. and that's how I'm trying to deal with this myself. I'm trying to catch myself. And yeah, I might interrupt the pod a few times,
Uh-huh.
but I feel like if I catch myself enough and interrupt myself enough, I hate being interrupted. I'm going to start consciously remembering, keep those two words out your mouth. You know, be like Will Smith to Chris Rock.
Keep those two words. So I think you know what though. Here's what I'm hearing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. When I when we look at knowing, you know what I mean? When we look at knowing is fully having an understanding, like knowing that you know brings a certain type of security. So from there, you're so comfortable saying what you're saying that you don't have any fear or perceived fear. And when we look at fear or we look at anxiety, anxiety is really the fear of what might happen, what you think is going to happen, but it's not really real. It doesn't actually exist. So we get into these situations on camera where we're so engulfed in what are other people gonna think that it creates a fear in us about a undesirable future outcome that hasn't happened and that probably won't happen because however you talk is how you talk and that's how you talk to everybody and that's how you've always spoken. So people are just receiving that and picking up all the other cues, but only you're looking at yourself and thinking, but I said, but I said this. Now you do want to be conscious of what you're saying, and that just comes with pacing, slowing down a bit, and really thinking about what you have to say and the point that you're trying to say. You know, yeah, for sure, man.
My biggest problem, and anybody that's worked with me, anybody that's sat down with me, uh, had a consultation, doing marketing or coming up with campaigns, my mind goes about 100,000 miles per second. And what happens a lot of times is when I try to slow down my speech, my mind continues to race.
Yeah.
And then I get into this point where I'm almost skipping sentences instead of saying everything. It's much harder to
Yeah.
slow down your mind than it is to slow down your mouth.
Right.
And
Right.
that's a problem that I have. My mind just starts firing. I just think about different combinations, different uh ways things can come together. Did I say again?
You might have. You
Yeah.
might not have. So I think so. Really, so
I'm trying to stop my and you the way I'm dealing with the camera anxiety thing,
mhm,
and I don't know if it's the right way, other than catching myself, is exposure therapy. Get
right.
myself in front of the camera as much as possible, expose
Hmm.
myself to it so I get more comfortable. It might work, it might not work, but I'm not the expert. You're the video guy. You're the man that has done training in voiceovers. You're a videographer. You do all these different things. And in today's world, video and audio are so huge. You need to be in them if you want to be successful in marketing. That's why we're talking about this. We're not just talking about it
Yeah.
because, hey, I've got camera anxiety. Let's work on this. Let's fix it.
Yeah.
It's important for marketing and advertising because if you don't use video and audio for your own advertising, and for any business owner or you know there it is, business owner or marketing executive, there's there's a point at which if you're not using media this way and you're only using you know visual, you know text
Other
as
things, substitutes.
substitutes, yeah, you're going to see you're going to hit a plateau. You're going to hit a plateau because it's not going to bring you what you're needing to bring. So I really want to give you the floor on some of the camera anxiety stuff and how you help people and how you've dealt with it yourself if you ever had it. Uh yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
man.
I get camera anxiety depending on the situation. You know what I mean? Depending on what it is. Over the years, it's gotten less and less, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. The first takeaway about that is it's weird talking to a device.
It is.
I'm gonna put that out there. No matter how old you are, if you go to talk to a phone, you're like, "This is stupid. Why am I even doing that?" And somewhere in our minds, we think that. So we have to. What I tell people when I'm on set is, "Okay, you're looking at the camera, but let's talk to a very best friend of yours. Who's a friend that you tell everything to? Let's talk to one person." When we do that, we create a situation where the mind goes to a different state. Now you see the camera, but you put yourself in a place where, okay, I'm comfortable and I know this person. I'm talking to my best friend, my homie, my sister, whoever it is. And that goes back to what I said about knowingness and security, which breeds the confidence because now you know who you're talking to mentally long enough to trick yourself to say what you've got to say. So that's the first part. The first part is talk to one person, and yes, I know it's weird talking to a camera because it is.
It
Just is.
absolutely is.
And it'll never not be weird. And you just got to get over that by some of that exposure therapy. Another thing that I find really helpful is understanding what you're gonna talk about enough and really buying into that. Sometimes we get the overthinking shit and we want it to be so perfect and we don't want to be criticized instead of just being comfortable and speaking our truth in whatever our work is. It's almost like an imposter syndrome comes over us so much so that we feel like we have to be careful because we may not be qualified to talk about whatever this is, or I don't want to get canceled if I'm talking about this, or I don't want the comment section to eat me alive, or what if I've got a booger in my nose, like all kinds of stuff. That's real shit.
It
So,
is.
you attach the friend to your camera. You get comfortable with what you got to say. You get comfortable with your knowingness and your confidence, and then you'll be able to really melt that anxiety away, even if it calls for you using a teleprompter, which means you'll be reading your words instead of looking at the camera, only thinking about the camera.
Yeah.
So that's really how I help people get through that when I'm on set.
Yeah, and those are all great things when you're doing, video work where there's a script or something else. A podcast, we like our first episode, we knew kind of what we were going to talk about. We were going to talk about names because when you had to name the podcast,
Right.
we said, let's just talk about that on the first
Yeah.
episode. Let's figure out how to name the podcast. Let's figure out
Mm-hmm.
why names are important. These different aspects of what to think about when you're naming a business or a brand or a podcast or anything like that.
Yeah.
We went in there with an idea of where we wanted the conversation to go, but when you're doing something like this, going organic and having it just be a conversation always seems to work better. So
You think it, you think it's
not having that teleprompter idea, like we didn't have a script on our screens when we were talking to each other.
right.
And when we're sitting here on Zoom, if you're watching the video, you saw me point to myself because I did it. I didn't call myself out on the audio. I am now, but when we're doing this on Zoom, it's a lot easier to imagine you're talking to just one person because you are.
Yeah.
You can see them. But back to that idea of being weird talking to a device. I mean, I'm looking at a miniature version of you.
Right.
It's like, yeah, I'm talking to you, but the you I'm seeing is about 3 inches tall. And
Well,
it's a little weird.
well, so there's another side of that. And you mentioned it earlier as far as needing like the different mediums to do what you need to do. The basis of it all, and I'm going to tail this back to having it being organic and not having a script. I'm going to show you why there always is a script. Everything in life is a communication. A communication is information that goes from one terminal to another terminal, or it goes from one terminal through something else to many. You see what I'm saying? So it's a communication, it's that transfer of ideas through space and time. So with that, you can communicate through a wide variety of mediums that don't allow you to put your face on it and have to be vulnerable and be there. But I want to pull it to this. A communication is a transfer of ideas. Before you have the ideas, you had a thought first. Something was either in your environment externally that made you have a thought, or something internally made you come up with a thought or an idea that you needed to say to somebody or to someone else, that you needed them to understand that and duplicate whatever that is. when you do all of that, you end up thinking through what you're going to say. And just like in TV and film, when you watch a sitcom or when you watch an Oprah or whatever, it's called a television program.
Right.
It's all, and you think that on the Oprah show, it's not scripted, and maybe their answers aren't scripted, but I guarantee you the program says, here's the agenda, here's what you're trying to get out of the person, here's what you want them to say, here are the questions that you need to ask or the touch points that you need to put out there. So when we're talking about making content like this or making content by yourself, as organic as it is, your response to your own question to yourself may be organic and original and free flowing, but only within the barriers and the confines of the program or itinerary that you put out. So, bringing it back, even if it's organic, there's always a track that you need to run on so that you can hit your target of communication. So you can say what you need to say, and the other person, people can understand what you're trying to say. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. It's the way I liken it is, three people were given a map. It says everyone starts here, you need to get here. And there's multiple pathways to get there. Each person's going to pick a different path.
Well,
Someone's
they
going to
can't
want to
read a
take the
damn
path
map.
yeah. Somebody's going to take the path along the river because they're going to say, I can follow the flow of the river. I'll never get lost. I know where I'm going. And then when I hit this clearing at the end of the river, I know where the destination is from there. Another person is going to say, look, this spot down the middle, it's not fully straight. It's not fully, cleared,
Right,
but it's a straight line and I can just
right.
plow through. And another person
Hmm.
might say, you know what? I want to go a scenic route. I want to go up this mountain. I want to see everything. And that'll also give me the opportunity to look at my destination from a higher vantage point and know how I got to get there and plan a path because this map is flat and I don't know what else is going on.
Right.
So having those bullet points, we came into this. Be, before we do a podcast, we sit and we talk for about 10, 15, 20 minutes.
Hmm.
And that's just for reference for everybody that thinks that we just hit record and start going.
Right.
We
And I've tried hit record and start going. It
it
doesn't
don't-
work like how you think it does. So don't, if you're out there watching this and you think I'm just gonna just hit record and start going, don't do that.
no, hit record a little early because you might catch something funny, but
Right.
but don't just hit record and go. You got to talk about it and you got to think about what's happening and go over the touch points that you mentioned before. We were talking before we hit record and we went over, the touch points that we wanted to hit on because it's very important to us that when we're talking to you, our listeners, you're going to get something out of this. We want you to we want to share our knowledge and our experience with you for one reason or another, either to increase listenership to this pod, that would help us a lot, or to potentially get one of you listeners as a client of ours for video work, for advertising work, for managed marketing, any of these different things. It was important for us to do the camera anxiety one though, because not only is it something that I'm dealing with, but there's a good portion. I think the last stat I looked at was 70% of people going on camera have almost debilitating camera anxiety. And it can show up. And it's not great for marketing and advertising. That
Yeah.
first episode, had some great content, had some great moments, but I kept, I mean, maybe it's just me. I kept thinking, how many times is this guy gonna say, you know, to me? It, and it can take away from what you're doing. And with the importance of video and audio in today's marketplace, when it comes to advertising, marketing, and business, you need to kind of clean that stuff up as best you can. And you've already given us some really great things. I mean, the way I deal with it is I just kind of I try to ignore it, and
Hmm.
it doesn't work that great. So tell me, do you have any more tips for I'd like to we've given out two at least. Let's can we come up with four? Can we come up with five, techniques to help with this for people? Because I mean, this isn't my forte. My
Well,
forte.
I mean, another thing people can do is they can start out small. A lot of times I feel like I have to send this big ass message and you just don't. Sometimes you only just need to say a little bit. And if you can't figure out what you have to say, maybe you're trying to say too much. I know I have a habit of saying too much sometimes. So what I need to do is dial it back and try not to be so wordy because that's important. So for anybody out there listening, man, dog, like dialing it back and saying a little less and just saying exactly what needs to be said is another point that helps, because you get to talking so much and it's just word salad. You just saying shit. You know what I mean? Don't mean nothing. Um, and then the last one, which kind of ties into the confidence, is the belief that what you're saying actually matters. We are talking about camera anxiety because it matters to you, but it also matters to a lot of other people out there. And the real purpose of this podcast is to add value to communications directors, marketing managers, and people in that space who sometimes it's their job to make a video for the company. When they got hired, they thought they were just going to be pushing buttons on the keyboard. Whole time, somebody handed their ass a camera, a light, and a selfie stick, and they said, "Hey, can you do this?" And now you're the person that's got to do it. And if you're the person that's got to do it, that can be troublesome, and you'll push it off and push it off when really you could do it. So, but you got to believe you are the person for that. Even if you don't, oh wow, I've always had an ugly chin, or I've always had a real big forehead, like all that stupid shit. You got to be like, you know what, man, I'm the person for the job. A sales manager told me years ago when I sold energy door to door, electric and gas. He said there's 10 two-letter words, which this is now I know this is from somewhere else, but this is what first time I heard it. He said, if it is to be, it is to be me. That's it. And has everything to do with taking responsibility and accountability and grabbing whatever it is by the horns and saying, I'm the one that's got to do it. I'm that guy. I'm scared, but I've got courage. I believe that this message that I got is the message that only I can deliver in an authentic way that I can deliver.
That is really true. I did it again. The
Don't
truth.
hate on yourself. Quit hating on
eh,
yourself.
Now I'm calling myself out. I'm not hating on myself. I'm calling myself out to remind me silence is better than saying something just to fill a void.
It's a practice, and
It's
you never
practice.
want to. It's a practice, and you never want to shame yourself. Shame does terrible things to us all.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't hate myself. I couldn't hate myself. I mean, look at me. All I have to do is look in the mirror and I say, "Oh, that's a handsome dude." All right, we're good. Me and you are good. Man in the mirror. It's just more so I want to make sure that I'm hoping this is the last episode that I have to call myself out on something.
Oh, you're gonna be calling yourself out for the rest of your
More than likely. But
life.
correction, I hope this is the last time I have to call myself out on an episode and not edit it out. Hey, every podcast does it. Unless they're doing it exactly live, there are edits that are being done.
There are edits.
Somebody said
There are
something
edits.
they weren't supposed to say, or somebody, dropped something, they dropped their mic. They told a personal story that they're like, you know what? We're gonna cut that out because, I don't want to put somebody else on blast or anything like that.
Right.
But a couple things that you said really stuck out to me too. The talk less portion. If you couldn't tell already by listening to this podcast, I'm a talker. I can't help it. I got a
Oh
lot to
yeah.
say.
You talk.
And I try to get into detail with things in order to give it some more power and give you more information than what you might necessarily need.
And sometimes things just have to just be. So
Yeah,
you don't need more power sometimes. Sometimes they have to just be.
it's
That's real
true.
shit.
And it's funny that you said the talk less because there's one gentleman that I worked with in the past. He's a sales coach, and his philosophy is talk less, sell more.
I love that.
And it just really sticks with this too. Because if you're talking less, you can have more confidence in exactly what you're saying. And if you're slowing down and you're talking slower, you can have a fully formed thought going out of your mouth before you actually say it. But in my case, like I said, my mind is going so fast that I
Oh
got
yeah.
to slow that thing down too. And that's a process. But we're working on it, through this, through other things.
You might be a journaler, man. You might need a journal.
Yeah, I've tried journaling, and the problem that I have with journaling is that as soon as I get the ideas out, more pop up, and I just can't stop writing them down.
So keep writing them down, Chris. Damn
I
it.
know, I know, I know.
Write
No,
them
I've
down.
got some
That's
journals on my
why.
phone. I've got some journals on my phone. I've got the pen, I've got I got the fold, I got the pen thing. I write stuff out all the time. Sometimes it's in the middle of the night, but the point is this this episode, I can already feel my anxiety melting a little bit.
Hmm.
And it's not just because of what you're talking about, it's because it's our second episode.
Yeah,
And if they've gotten to this point of what listening or watching our second episode, they must like what we have to say a little bit.
that's right.
And I'm going to use some of your tips here too, uh, because they're great. It help. These are things that you can use to help yourself. It's not just camera anxiety. If you have public speaking anxiety, a lot of the same things can relate. The talking to your best friend,
Oh
or
yeah.
having confidence in what you're saying, taking it slower, saying less. Those are things that anybody can use in any situation, whether it's on camera, on a sales call, in front of a crowd, doing a seminar,
Yeah.
and it really helps. Earlier I said there's a big difference between, getting in front of a room of people, 500 people at a seminar, or, getting in front of a camera.
Yeah.
The biggest things for me is I have to be thinking about something, and I have to be
Yeah.
observing something. When I'm looking at the camera or a monitor with me on it, like what I'm doing right now, there's only one thing to focus on, and that's me and my mannerisms, what I'm saying. I'm just internalizing everything.
Right.
When
That's
I'm
it.
doing a public speaking arrangement, I can read the people. I can look at the people that I'm talking to, feel them out, see their body language, make adjustments based on what I'm observing in the audience. And that's what makes it easier for me to
Yeah.
do that than to do this, because the audience isn't going to be interacting with this until it's done.
That's right.
I don't know whether I should have pivoted earlier, what I should have said less, whether I should have changed the subject or what. It's just a different animal.
It is. It is, man. It is. I don't have any more tips, right now, but I think that those are some solid things that we could leave for the people so that they could be
Yeah.
able to just use those nuggets, use those gems, and just start to make something. Even if you think it sucks, it's just a matter of getting started.
Yeah. Well, the give the people the 4 tips again, really quick, and then I'll let you do the close because mine rambled on last time. And we'll oh, we do have Twitter or X, whichever. It's at Admin Podcast. So, you can throw that in the close too after you give us those 4 tips again, just to let everybody end with something that they can take action with.
Got you, got you. If I can remember them all the way, definitely believing in what you're saying. Having a script, something that you written down, something that you can put together to stay inside of the lines. Looking at the camera as if it's your friend necessarily, and making sure that you remember, hey, go to a time. And I like to use this almost like a prompt for ChatGPT, but for your mind. You say, go to a time when I was talking to a very dear friend, or go to a time where I was talking to a very best friend. And you go there. And then when you open your eyes, you still feel there. See what I'm saying? The other thing is we acknowledge, and you should acknowledge too, that talking to a device may feel weird because it is. If you were born in 1990 or before, you just not something that you did because there wasn't any device to talk to except for the rotary telephone in the house phone. You know what I'm saying? So like, though if I remember straight, I think I hit the points.
Yep, you did.
If not, it, it if I did miss something, put it down in the comment section below, whatever one I missed. And if you think of something else, go ahead and drop that in the comments too, so that we can talk about those things because it's a dialogue. I like to think that we're professionals, but we're all students of advertising. So if you're in school for marketing, if you're out of marketing, if you paid some money for a workshop or a training or a class, and you're just kind of getting your feet wet, we're all really in this thing together to learn and grow. Iron sharpens iron. Thank you so much. My name is Omri. This is Chris Ronsky, and we are on the Admin Podcast. Thanks for watching.
Yep. Make sure you catch us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Follow us on X at Admin Podcast, and we're good.